Rep the South Side whenever you pay with your White Sox debit card from Wintrust Community Banks and score perks like free ATMs, no monthly fees, and a $300 opening bonus. Pay with pride every time with Wintrust, Chicago's bank.
Hey everyone, it's 𝗪𝗏. Welcome back. It is another edition of the White Sox podcast brought to you by Wintrust, Chicago's bank. Show your team pride with a White Sox debit card. Get yours at wintrust.com/Sox. Member FDIC, EHL lender. All right, so after going 5-21 in April, the White Sox have already surpassed that win total here in May, and we are only halfway through the month. Now, this is not a perfect team. They are still very much in a rebuild, but they are winning series. They've been a hit or two away from winning more, and players who represent the future of the team are making big statements about what they are and who they are as major leaguers. We're talking to Edgar Quero, Chase Meidroth, Shane Smith, Jonathan Cannon, to name a few. It is tough to predict baseball, but are the White Sox turning the corner? Is this recent success sustainable? Is this a team that you can believe in? CHSN field reporter and insider Connor McKnight joins me to discuss this and more. Let's do it. All right, joining us from Cincinnati, where the White Sox are finishing up their series with the Reds. Today it is Connor McKnight. All right, Connor, are you feeling better about the White Sox right now?
I think I am. Nice to take 2 of 3 from Miami. They wanted 2 of 3 taken from them, and they did that, so that's good. And then, the first night in Cincinnati was a really good ball game. You gave up a homer to Elly De La Cruz when you didn't want to give one up. But Jonathan Cannon talked after that ball game and mentioned just how much it was nice to see that extra innings win come around, that the team kind of needed to feel that a little bit. There have been a lot of letdowns, in close games so far this year. So to see that, when I kind of think about it as like shooters got to see one go down every now and again. Even if you got a cold streak or something, you see one go down, it feels better. And it sounded like that's what that ball club needed a little bit on that night. You get the tack-on runs too, right? It's not just Chase Meidroth coming through with an RBI single through the right side. It is also the homer by Miguel Vargas, which helps space things out. And I think that makes it more of it felt like it was a more emphatic win. And I think put things, are on the right tracks when it comes to a lot of those young hitters. It's nice to see, Quero and Meidroth and Vargas all kind of factor big in that offensive output too. Those are the guys that you want to see improvements from. And so far, yeah, that's happened over the last week or so.
I mean, they went 5-21 in April. They've already surpassed their win total here in May. We're only halfway through the season. Halfway through the month. And by the way, my partner, 𝗪𝗟 𝗠𝗏, said on May the 1st, his bold prediction was the White Sox would have a 500 record in the month of May. And I'm looking at who they've got coming up. One more game with the Reds, 3 at the Cubs, 3 at home against the Mariners with 3 of their starters on the injured list. They got the Rangers at home, then they're at the Mets, and it's 2 at the Orioles. The third game is on June the 1st. Do you think that the White Sox could finish with a 500 or better record for the month of May?
It's a tougher schedule than it kind of laid up to be when the season started, right? The Cubs offensively have been so much better than people thought. That Mets team is a tough one. You would have said the Mariners are going to be really tough to score against when the season started. And now, as you mentioned, all the pitching injuries that they've got, and that offense has all of a sudden turned it on. So a lot of those teams on that schedule look very different than how we thought they'd look when the season opened up, right? I certainly hope they can get there. It's weird that the Orioles series feels like the soft landing at the end of May. Like, that's bizarre. I like what they've been able to do from a pitching standpoint, from a bullpen standpoint. I like that they went back to the opener in night 1 against Cincinnati because of the advantages that gave them early on. I think they'll keep doing that when they can. I certainly like the defense. It's getting a lot better. And the other thing, Chuck, is toward the end of the month here, and perhaps even sooner, you could see Slater. You could see Mike Tauchman. You could see Corey Lee. You could see, maybe even one more call-up that might be somewhat interesting, too. There could be reinforcements on the way. So I think the chances of having an over 500 month here in May are as good as perhaps any other.
How would they fit in Corey Lee? That's my question.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one. I think you could have a 3-catcher roster. I think that becomes harder with Tim Elko and Andrew Vaughn both in the 26-man roster in the first place, right? I think they've obviously shown their preference to having a lot of defensive options at short, and that includes having Jake Amaya on the roster and Chase Meidroth. Chase has been banged up a little bit here. I think it would be a difficult squeeze, and you probably have to take – listen, I like the way Brooks Baldwin is playing right now, and I think that there's a lot of growth there, but there are options. He's a young guy. Perhaps that's something you want to do. I just don't and perhaps Corey Lee stays in AAA Charlotte, but, with the depth you've got at catcher right now, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody comes calling for either Matt 𝗙ice or Corey Lee as we get a little bit later here. There are contenders that need catching, and both of those guys have played pretty well and shown their ability to kind of hit their top marks.
Let the good times cruise at the Crosstown Classic with Sun Cruiser and CHSN, May 16th to the 18th. CHSN is rolling into Wrigleyville, so don't miss your chance to win free prizes and enjoy ice-cold Sun Cruisers. Follow Sun Cruiser and CHSN now to find out where we'll be before first pitch.
So I want to hopefully put comparisons to last year to bed right here, right now on the podcast. Okay, so I've heard people say this team's worse than last year. They're going to lose more games than last year. So as we tape this, they're one game ahead of last year's pace. But I know you don't want to go down this road of last year again. Maybe this will be the last time I have to say this, but let's remind everybody, Connor, that from May 17th to June 6th, they lost 18 of 19 games last year. From July 10th to August 5th, they lost 21 games in a row. And from August 23rd to September 13th, they lost 16 of 18. All told, those three stretches, they went 3-55. Do you see now? Listen, it's baseball. Anything can happen. But do you see that even being remotely possible for this team doing three stretches combined like that?
I really don't. And we talked about this when the season started. I think it's worth, if there's anything worth reminding people about from 2024, and there's not much, it's how unlikely the win and loss record was for that team in that season. Like, it's just, that doesn't happen. They had to be bad, and they were, and incredibly unlucky, and they were, and have a lot of breaks not go their way, which in baseball, I qualify those as two different things, right? The breaks going your way and luck are two very different things.
Yeah.
I just don't see that happening for this ball club, not at that stretch. I don't see that happening for many ball clubs, maybe the Rockies, over that kind of a stretch. Like, I don't think that exists in back-to-back seasons. I really don't. Plus, like we've said, the call-ups, the additions, right, over these next 3 months should be additive. They're not necessarily going to be, like guys looking to continue careers and like hang on one last place and maybe get moved to a contender or something like that. There are players that can get added here that should be, like I said, pluses to this lineup as opposed to where the roster moves were, kind of last season.
All right. So we are obviously looking at just a short period of time, right? Half of a month. But considering what we've seen from this team and like what you said, what's coming at some point, but as we're here, do you feel like they are turning a corner?
I think so, and here's why. Josh Barfield spoke to reporters before the first game of the Red Series.
Yeah.
And mentioned with Quero and Elko and Meidroth specifically. This is the guys that he was talking about, and I'll spread this across, more of the toast than he did. But there are survival skills in baseball that he kind of mentioned about those guys. Being able to control the strike zone, being able to go after pitches that you can do damage on, whether you're doing damage on them or not, is almost immaterial when we're talking about the survival skills. It's, are you making the right swing decisions? And that's something we've been talking about with this White Sox franchise, this organization, for 4 straight months, right? Going back to spring training. Those survival skills seem very clearly there for Meidroth and Quero and Miguel Vargas and Tim Elko to a different degree, but when you got the pop he does, that's okay. What I'm seeing now, right, are their adaptability skills, not just the survival skills on display, not just can you hang in there against big league pitching. What do you do next after big league pitching starts getting you out? Quero had a really rough stretch before getting, to Cincinnati. Well, at the end of the Mariners, then getting to Cincinnati, and then had a great night. 3 hits in night number 1, playing better defensively. He started adapting a little bit. You look at the hit that put the White Sox up against the Reds in extras. Chase Meidroth takes a fastball up and out of the strike zone, which he doesn't swing at often, and drives it. Yeah, and goes opposite way to score a run. Like, being able to adapt, not necessarily change who you are, but adapt in a given situation is meaningful to me. And seeing that from some of the, the younger guys, that is what would turn a corner for the White Sox. That's how this is going to happen, and you're seeing it.
All right, so how are things turning? You brought up Meidroth, you brought up Quero and Vargas. The White Sox rank 16th in the majors in walks. All right. You're probably listening. Yeah, who cares? Walks. All right. Last year and the year before, they ranked last in the majors in walks. In 2022, 29th. This is a massive jump from young guys. These aren't veterans. They didn't like sign Yasmani Grandal, who's known for walks. These are young guys getting their first or second tastes of Major League Baseball, and they are drawing walks. This is a great trend in the right direction. Would you agree?
I completely agree. And I think there are it's very easy for baseball fans of any stripe to look at the walk totals on your offense and go, yeah, they're walking. Let me see a hit for some power. Let me see a hit with runners and scoring, all that kind of stuff. But just think about the converse, right? Think about how much you, again, baseball fan of any stripe, think about how much you hate when your guy out of the bullpen puts the leadoff guy on 5 pitches. Like, you understand cognitively how much that sucks when your team does it, but you're not willing to credit your team for doing it sometimes when you want to see more from a given, offense or whatever. So I think that's a big, big deal. And you don't, in my opinion, this day and age of baseball, and we're seeing it change a little bit, like literally as we're talking, but you don't necessarily have to have a top 5 offense in terms of walks. You want to see more slugging percentage. And that's where the White Sox are chasing things a little bit, right? And it's also where seeing Braden Montgomery doing what he's doing at both Kannapolis and now Winston-Salem, which, if you haven't looked, is just absolutely obliterating pitching. I mean, just killing guys. And some other power sources from the rest of the way, that's encouraging. That's what's next. It is, a little bit more down the line, and we'll see what, happens with Tim Elko over the next couple of weeks too. He's obviously got some pop.
And we're talking about walks. Look what happened in the first game of this Reds series. There are 2 outs. There's a man on second, the ghost runner, in the 10th inning. What does Matt 𝗠liche do? He gets a huge walk, keeps the game alive, allowing Miguel Vargas, the next batter, to hit a 3-run homer.
Yeah, and tack-on runs are big, right? Will Venables talked a lot about how this bullpen is, they're going to try and find matchups wherever they possibly can, try and find the advantage, and then press it. That means there's not a set closer. That means there's not a set knockdown strikeout kind of guy, right? Steven Wilson has been pitching well. I think, you give up a home run to Elly De La Cruz, and maybe it's a tough pitch, but you can still be pitching well after giving a home run to him. You need more than just one. And 𝗠liche worked a huge walk. And I think what's cool about 𝗠ice's walk too is, he was, I forget if it was the 3-1 pitch or the 3-0 pitch, but he took one and thought he was headed down to first. I'm talking about the one he took that was outside the strike zone. He didn't swing at all in that bat, if memory serves, and still hangs in there, goes 3-2, and continues the plate discipline, right? Instead of getting, all kinds of whatever, he's still him at the plate, which I thought was a really cool veteran ad, right? That's what you need to see, and hopefully that's what the rest of those guys down the bench were able to see from 𝗠liche in that at-bat too. It's a big one.
All right, so this is going to sound strange, but so the White Sox rank 28th in the majors in runs, which is obviously terrible. They are right behind the Royals, the Rangers, and the, ready, Orioles. Shocking. And you would say this is not a big improvement from last year, because last year they were 30th. They just went from 30th to 28th. But when you consider that they finished almost 100 runs worse than the next worst team in baseball, this is actually a big improvement. And it's not like they went out and signed big players in the offseason. Tauchman's been hurt. Slater's been hurt. Rojas has been hurt. I think when I look at this team and the way it's been constructed, even though they have had some confounding losses, like things that games they should have won. They've lost so many close games. I kind of feel like they're getting the most out of what they have, but I think they're doing as good of a job as possible with the roster they have and with the underperformance that has occurred.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think, this makes me think of the run jump here, right? Relative though it is, makes me think of, fantasy drafts, whether it's baseball or football, right? Mm-hmm. And if you're drafting in fantasy, you tier the players, right? Okay, these 4 guys I would take in the top 10, and then it's a big drop to your next tier of second baseman or your next tier, whatever it is. So you don't want to make your reaches, in that position because the tiers matter. And I think that's all relative here too, right? I think that's kind of the function. When you're talking about finishing 30th last year and also 100 runs behind 29, the tier behind from that offense, that 29th ranked offense, which I think was the Marlins last year, and to where the White Sox were, is like that's the Billy Beane line, like that's 50 feet of crap. It's what it was.
Yeah.
And now you are equal with or close to or in the realm of, and you mentioned some other teams in that list that are, they're going to push for playoff spots. Now you can do it differently if you're the Royals because you have Bobby Witt and other teams don't, and you pitched the way you have and you play defense the way you do. But there's blueprints there, right? I want more runs, same way everybody does. But along the way, I want my run prevention. I want my swing decisions. I want my young players to be playing well, all that kind of stuff. And some of that stuff you're able to check off. The one thing that they haven't, right? And I think it's fair to say, the White Sox went with a very particular approach to putting this bullpen together this year. And they have seen some ups and downs because of it.
All right. They have a pitching staff with a payroll of around $10 million. All right. So when you watch this pitching staff, keep that in mind. And I think $3.5 million of it went to Martin Perez.
Yeah.
Okay. Jonathan Cannon, last 3 starts, 4 earned runs, no walks, 6 innings or more in 5 straight games. And then you have I think the best story on this team and one of the best in baseball, it's Shane Smith. He's given up 10 earned runs in his first 8 major league starts. He has a 2.08 ERA, same as 𝗵𝗏, right behind Garrett Crochet, 9th lowest ERA in the major leagues. We're talking about Shane Smith a lot. I'm not sure most of Chicago still even knows who he is, and yet he's doing something really special.
Yeah, he's been a lot of fun to watch. He's starting to, we talked about that adaptability earlier on. He's starting to make his adaptations work for him too. I think one of the skill sets that I've seen from Shane that I didn't expect to see is he seems to understand what he's got and how he needs to use it in a given start to get guys out really quickly. There's a lot of young starters, and regardless of Shane's age, right, his experience has been at the AA level up until this point. There's a lot of guys younger than him with more experience in the bigs that don't adapt quick enough, whether that's a conversation they're not able to have properly with a catcher or pitching coach, or not able to suss that stuff out for themselves. All that's on the table. Shane seems to adapt pretty quickly. His last start, if I remember right, I called that one. It was against the Marlins. He was 96, 97 early, and that's not been the case for him. Mm-hmm. So he started juicing fastballs top rail because that's what was working, right? That changeup didn't come around until a lot later, and he started mixing in some off speed too later in his start. But that fastball was moving, and he was smoking guys with it because he had that extra velo. Usually he starts around 93, 94 and works himself up to that day for whatever reason. Started out good. So if that works, use it. And I think that's such a huge thing for a young pitcher. It's right up there with learning how to compete with less than your best in a given start for me. Mm-hmm. And that you're seeing Shane Smith kind of click that box is incredible.
Let the good times cruise at the Crosstown Classic with Sun Cruiser and 𝗵𝗀, May 16th to the 18th. 𝗵𝗀 is rolling into Wrigleyville, so don't miss your chance to win free prizes and enjoy ice-cold Sun Cruisers. Follow Sun Cruiser and 𝗵𝗀 now to find out where we'll be before first pitch.
Big test for him in his next start at the Cubs.
Yeah.
And I looked at the forecast. It's supposed to be warm. That sounds like the wind coming out of the south. That sounds like maybe wind blowing out against this potent offense. I'm very curious to see how he does and how they do, the Cubs, against him. One last thing. This is brought to you by Toyota. Let's go places. All right, let's go into the future. Connor McKnight, the White Sox are playing good baseball. Is this kind of baseball the White Sox are playing sustainable? Can they keep playing like this and play beyond people's expectations for a long period of time?
I think they can. Certainly if they keep pitching like this. The starter's ERA, I think, is 11th in baseball or 10th in baseball, something right around there, depending on, when you're listening to this and when you're sorting the stats, right? I think the defense is working the way you'd like to see it. Obviously the one caveat here, and it's a big one, is at what point are we making that determination? Is it after the trade deadline when some of the guys that are making a difference needed to go somewhere else to help some contenders and bring some prospects back? I think that's obviously with a rebuilding team, the thing you have to keep in mind. Like we've talked about a couple of times here, Chuck, the guys that are going to come in after trades get made should, for the most part, be guys that are interesting to go watch, right? Interesting to see develop and pieces that are going to, fit in and perhaps be for the long term. So, is it sustainable from an on-field perspective? Yeah, I think so. Somewhat tenuous because some of those trades are going to be on the table. But make no mistake, this front office and this new coaching staff are working to make the process a sustainable one, and one that all players can follow and work through here down the line. That's what's kind of reinvigorating a lot of guys that have been here for a minute. That is what's turned on a lot of veterans that have come in here and kind of explored this new process. And it's a big reason why, the names that have come aboard, whether it's, Venable or Ryan Fuller or Brian Bannister, these guys that are big time decision makers, big picture decision makers, that's why they're here. It's because this process needed to get laid out and they're building it to make something that is more sustainable. So I think those are good things too, even if you're not seeing everything you want to see as a White Sox fan come, tomorrow night's ball game or whatever it is that you're going to turn on the next one, which it should be tomorrow night. You should always watch on CHSN because we're a ton of fun.
The way I look at it is, last year you'd turn on a Sox game and many times they were just getting blown out. They're in pretty much every game. They're 2-10 or maybe 3-10 in 1-run games at this point. They're 1-6 in 2-run games. So 55% of their losses are by 2 runs or less. And I see two things there. One, they're not scoring enough runs. That's why, because they're not losing 7-6. They're losing 3-2.
Yeah.
So they're in games, and if they just get a little more offense at crucial times, these close losses become close wins. Meanwhile, 9 of their 13 wins as we tape this have been by 4 runs or more, and they have 5 blowout wins of 7 runs or more against these 5 teams: the Brewers, the Red Sox, Twins, Angels, and A's. So they're giving you a little bit of everything here to give you hope. And the losses stink, and that April was awful. But Connor, as we sit here in May, I'm feeling a lot better about the team and where this is headed, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me about it.
Always a pleasure, and it has been a lot more fun to watch, and I'm looking forward to talking to you guys on the pregame and postgame show as we go on here over the next couple of weeks.
All right, awesome. Connor McKnight joining us on the White Sox podcast. Thank you so much. Hawk Carrollson, take it away.
All right, Chuck, this edition of the White Sox podcast is over.